is very important. But because we're such a connected generation, we are very globally aware too. So some people, there's a turnoff to a degree around made in America, made in America, made in America. There's a huge craft scene in Europe. There's a huge new craft scene in Australia.
Yeah.
So this, yes, handmade in America is extremely important. Handmade in Canada is extremely important. But there's also a global consciousness that says, I want to kind of own pieces from around the world too. Almost like souvenirs without the travel. You know, and we have friends, like I have people that I talk to all the time, or I do sessions with people who are on the other side of the world. You know, and I want to own a piece of that too. So it's a yes and no kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Like, I think our triggers are things like indie, you know, independent made, small scale, responsibly made. So less about, I think, the geography and more about the fact that it is still, you know, individual maker, small scale production. That's really what we're looking for.
And I think I'm wondering too if part of like the background on your question is like the kind of faux fair trade kind of movement that goes on. And I think that the younger generation is conscious of the fact that fair trade doesn't always mean fair trade, right? So yeah, so I think we're looking to support other people like us. So whether they're American or whether they're European or whether they're Australian or Russian or whatever, we're looking to support other people like us.
Well, and I think we're looking to support people that we make a connection with too, and so I think that becomes really important, feeling like you can connect with the actual maker. So it goes back to what Tara was talking about, and I'm sure Bruce talked about it in his presentation too, about that idea of the story and building the story and you know, even bringing the makers in, because we are. And then, you know, like I want to know if someone's having a trunk show, and then not only are they at the trunk show, they're live tweeting it. So I feel, you know, I can't be there. I feel like I'm there. So I think that kind of thing is really important. We don't really distinguish between like the real world and the online world anymore. It's just our world. So all of that stuff kind of crosses over, and I think that's really important. Like everyone in my corner of the show is standing there tweeting the show. So, but then we're like, well, we're the only ones. So I think that's something that's really important to us too. Yes?
About the buy local movement.
That's a big one. You know, I actually think buy local has more of a ring than buy American. So the more local designers you can pull into the store, I think people really do respond to that. And what's great is that it seems like any kind of major area, there's a great young local craft scene. And so you could actually bring in a couple of them to the store, try things. I know I teach in Baltimore, and Baltimore has a great local craft scene. Philly has a great local craft scene actually too, New York. So I think local actually has a really important ring for people, yeah.
Yeah, my first website was actually called handmadeinpa.net. It's since been taken over by the Pennsylvania Guild of Craftsmen, and I found kind of jumping into it without knowing anyone and just kind of doing this all on my own, that a community very quickly formed around this idea of, well, we're all from Pennsylvania, we're all neighbors, we all have something in common. So yeah, local is huge. Yeah, that was a great follow-up question. Thank you. Other questions?
You've been pussyfooting around gently, and you talked about Caucasian people, and you ignored Oriental people. What?
Wait, what do you mean?
You talked about Germany and Australia and this and that, and you never mentioned Indonesia.
You mean like stuff
or
made
China.
in China?
Exactly, China.
No, that's a great point. I think
I don't think we have any problem with stuff made in that part of the country if, again, it's like small makers that we have connections with. Like I know I follow people on Twitter who are producing in that part of the world and who do make some really cool stuff. But I think we are really cognizant of that, like made in China.
It's often knocked off.
It is often
Yes.
knocked off. And I know for me, and actually I think for a lot of people in our community, knockoff is a really big thing that we're concerned about. Like that bothers us. I know it bothers me. And so I think that we're not willing to just accept that. Like, you know, if someone there was a great example, I mean, it's not a great example, it's a sad example of someone in England who had been knocked off by Claire's.
Yeah.
And that stuff is actually spreads faster online. Like, you know immediately who's been knocked off by whom in like a matter of hours.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and to speak to kind of the Asia part of the world as well, I think the reason we don't talk about it is almost a very technical reason. The parts of the world that we talk about are the parts of the world where there's a lot of internet connection.
and a lot of English. No, I think it's more a lot of English speakers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a whole group of people on Twitter that are tweeting in a language that I would never
Yeah.
even. I don't connect with them because we literally don't speak the same language. And I think that's the other reason that we tend to gravitate towards those communities, is that we tend to speak the same language.
Great question.
Well, and I would say too, I think this is something that's really important to understand, is that we are a generation of people who grew up on like a good design. Like Target is a big example. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I shop at Target because I grew up and was trained to appreciate good design, and so I won't buy handmade. If it's ugly and it's handmade, I'm not gonna buy it. I mean, let's be frank. So I mean, my highest priority is well-designed, handmade. Sometimes I can't find those two together. And so then and design is really important to me, and I think it's really important to a lot of our peers too. So we're looking for that good design stuff. So if you can bring in good design that's handmade, bam, you nailed it, and that's what I go for.
She asked if younger people are kind of have any sort of offense to
Or turned off by.
or are turned off by being approached by a store employee or a gallery owner and kind of learning a little bit about the store and the story around it. And I would say no. In fact, I am often more, not offended is a bad word, but I'm often more turned off when I feel I enter someplace and people immediately think, oh, well, she can't afford this, she's not interested. It's like, no, please come talk to me because I'm kind of shy and I'm not going to approach you. So yeah, I love it personally.
But what I would add is that, yeah, I don't think that we have any problem with being approached, but we do our research. So like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to a store, I have probably been online, I've looked at your website, you know, first of all, I've Googled your address, or I've heard about it online somehow. So I actually think that having a great website is really actually important for getting a younger buyer into your store, because if I see a website that's not well designed, that's a huge turnoff for me. Even if you were carrying the greatest products, that's something that would probably actually deter me from coming into your store, especially if it was like a store I had to go drive to or something. So I want to be able to see the story of your gallery before I go.
Yeah.
But then once I'm there, I want someone to help me to at least make that presence, that kind of touch point.
Yeah, because then you're probably looking for something specific
Right, exactly.
too. And if you approach me, then I can say to you, hey, I'm looking for the Megan Aumont earrings I saw online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I saw it online. That's probably,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no problem.